Good morning to you. Welcome to our first class this day. I do hope that you'll be always available every Thursday in the morning, 8 to 11, so that we can go through this course, medical parasitology. Now, today I want us to introduce this topic, and I want to hope that you went through the introductory part whereby I had given you an overview of what is expected of you through this course. In our first topic, we are going to cover general parasitology. And basically, as I had introduced earlier, I just mentioned that parasitology is the study of parasites. Now, you realize that human beings and other living organisms on Earth usually live in an entangled relationship, like they don't live in isolation. They don't exist in isolation. So they're interdependent. They depend on one another, and each forms a strand in the web of life. So medical parasitology is the science that deals with organisms living in the human body, that is the host, and the medical significance of this host-parasite relationship. The objective of this topic is that by the end of it, you as a learner, you should be able to discuss the various types of parasites and hosts, explain the relationship between a parasite and the host, and their effects. Also, you should be able to discuss or describe in detail the classification of medically important parasites, and also explain the differences between cestodes, nematodes, trematodes, and protozoa. So together as we start, I do hope that we shall be able to grasp more with the learning materials or topical resources. You'll find them attached here in this topic. Now, maybe we begin with looking at the association between parasites and hosts. So a parasite is a living organism which takes its nourishment and other needs from a host. The host is an organism which supports the parasite. So they do live in a way that they depend on one another. But a parasite basically takes nourishment from a host. So it nourishes itself from a host, like a tick, a mosquito. Those are parasites. And the host is an organism which supports the parasite. So because the host is the one nourishing the parasite, then it's the one that is supporting it. The parasites included in medical parasitology are protozoa, helminths, and some arthropods. You'll see them in your notes attached. And the hosts vary depending on whether they harbor the various stages in parasitic development. Now, human parasitology is basically the study of those organisms which parasitize humans. According to the very broad definition of parasitology, parasites should include the viruses, bacteria, fungi, protozoa, and metazoa, which infect the host species. So medical parasitology is to investigate all aspects of the following one: the biology of the parasite, like how is it in terms of its DNA, in terms of its morphology, that is shape, in terms of how it causes disease, the variation in life cycle of the parasites, because there are those that live for a very short time and they die, others live longer. Then methods of invasion of the host, how do they get into the host? Migration and maturation within the host, how do they get to move within the host? Do they migrate from one part of the body to another? Then the effect of the parasite upon the host. What are the effects that result? Is it that they bring about some diseases? And these diseases, do they present with fever? Do they present with stomach aches or backaches? Do they present with nausea and vomiting, And the host reaction and response to the parasite. Also methods of escape from the host, distribution of the parasite, diagnosis of the parasitic diseases, and treatment and prevention of the diseases. There are several factors that lead to increasing frequency of some parasitic diseases and their spread. So we'll also focus on that, on those issues. Then we'll also look at the increased mobility of the population, like how does it spread within the population, popularity of the tropics and subtropics as vacation areas, speed of transportation, refugees from war-torn areas, modification of environment by humans, global warming, illegal trade of animals, AIDS and patients under immunosuppression, development of resistance to drugs, that is antimalarials, and then we shall also look at geographical distribution factors in terms of endemicity, that is like presence of a suitable host, habits of the host, escape from the host, favorable conditions outside of the host, and also economic and social conditions. Later on, we shall be able to look at such. Every time you study parasites, you need to have that at the back of your mind, because those aspects are very important for you to investigate and therefore make rightful conclusions, therefore get right judgments. Now, we have different kinds of parasites. We do have ectoparasites, we do have the endoparasites, we have obligate parasites, we do have facultative parasites, accidental parasites, and also we have erratic parasites. Now, beginning with the ectoparasites, these are parasites, a parasitic organism that lives on the outer surface of its host. For example, lice, ticks, mites, etc. Endoparasites live inside. Endo means inside. So it means the parasites live inside the body of the host, like Entamoeba histolica, that bring about amoebasis. Then obligate parasites are usually completely dependent on the host during a segment or all of its life cycle. For example, the Plasmodium species that bring about malaria, those are obligate parasites. Then facultative parasites are usually organisms that exhibit both parasitic and non-parasitic modes of living, and hence does not absolutely depend on the parasitic way of life, but it's capable of adapting to it if placed on a host. For example, Naegleria fowleri. Then we have accidental parasites. When a parasite attacks a natural host and survives, then we say this is an accidental one, like that rat tapeworm. Then erratic parasite is the one that wanders into an organ in which it's not usually found, like Entamoeba histolica in the liver or lung of the human being, because usually it should be in the stomach. So most of the parasites which live in or on the body of the host do not cause diseases. That is, they're non-pathogenic. In medical parasitology, we'll focus on most of the disease-causing, that is pathogenic parasites. However, understanding parasites which do not ordinarily produce disease in healthy, that is immunocompetent individuals, but do cause illness in individuals with impaired defense mechanism, that is opportunistic parasites, is becoming of paramount importance because of the increasing prevalence of HIV/AIDS in our country. So, when an individual is HIV positive, you'll find that they are more immunosuppressed, they are more prone to infections, and it's always important to have a look at what could be really like most of the opportunistic infections that come about and what causes them. So you're saying that much as you may not really look at those parasites that don't bring about diseases in humans, you could be interested in those that could still may not bring cause diseases in those who are immunocompetent, those who are healthy, who are not immunosuppressed. The immune system is strong compared to those whose immune system is weakened, like in the case of HIV, AIDS, TB, cancer, and such like. Now we've looked at the different types of parasites. We can now look at the different kinds of hosts. So with hosts, we have definitive hosts. And a host that harbors, these are hosts that harbors a parasite in the adult stage, or where the parasite undergoes a sexual method of reproduction. So definitive host is just whereby the parasite gets into the body of this organism and stays there at the point of maturity or reproduction. Then we do have intermediate host, whereby they don't harbor the larval stages of the parasite, or an asexual cycle of development takes place. In some cases, larval development is completed in two different intermediate hosts. And referred to as first and second intermediate hosts. We have paratenic hosts, whereby a host that serves as a temporary refuge, and it's a vehicle for reaching an obligatory host, usually the definitive host, and it's not necessary for the completion of the parasite's life cycle. Then we have the reservoir host, and it's a host that makes the parasite available for the transmission to other hosts and is usually not affected by the infection. About natural host, it's a host that is usually naturally infected with certain species of parasites. And lastly, we do have the accidental host that is under normal circumstances not infected with the parasite, but maybe now accidentally it gets affected. Now, we do have several relationships amongst the host and the parasite, and we call them symbiotic relationships. And why do we call it symbiotic? Do you remember biology? Yeah, we are saying that actually an organism that spends a portion of all or its life cycle, a portion or all of its life cycle intimately associated with another organism of a different species considered as a symbiont. And this relationship is called symbiosis. So when we talk about symbiotic relationships, actually there are three. And one of them is mutualism, whereby it's an association in which both partners are metabolically dependent upon each other and cannot live without the help of the other. However, none of the partners suffers any harm from the association. So with this, you'll find that you live together, but you don't harm one another. So the parasite doesn't harm you, you don't harm it in any way, but you depend on each other. You can't survive with from if you don't have the other. Then you have commensalism. This is an association in which the commensal takes the benefit without causing injury to the host. And for example, most of the normal floras of the human's body can be considered as commensals. Usually, the normal flora are the normal bacteria. We do have the normal bacteria within the body, especially within the mucous linings, and as they say there, they're supposed to make that part be healthy, like help prevent infections. So with such bacteria, if they live there, those are healthy bacteria, they're normal floras, and they will not cause any harm to that human body. So it will just benefit, but will not cause any injury to the host. Then parasitism, an association where one of the partners is harmed and the other lives at the expense of the other. So an example is worms like Ascaris lumbricoides, which reside in the GIT of the human being and feed on important items of the intestinal food, causing various illnesses. Then we are now clear with these associations of hosts and parasites. We could maybe look at the effects of parasites on the host. Usually the damage with pathogenic parasites produced in the tissues of the host may be described in the following two ways. One, the direct effect of the parasite, and two, indirect. Now with the direct, we have mechanical injury whereby it may be inflicted by a parasite by means of pressure as it grows larger, e.g. hydatid cyst causes blockage of ducts such as blood vessels, reducing infraction. Then we have deleterious effect of toxic substances, like in Plasmodium falciparum, production of toxic substances may cause triggers and other symptoms. You feel like, when you start having those symptoms of malaria, you may have, you may shiver, you may have episodes of feeling cold and hot, those heat flashes and the rigors, the body may be like it's having tremors. Then deprivation of nutrients, fluids, and metabolites is also a direct effect to the host, whereby the parasite may produce disease by competing with the host for nutrients. Now, what about the indirect effects? One is the immunological reaction, whereby you have tissue damage which may be caused by immunological response of the host, for example, nephritic syndrome following Plasmodium infections. So excessive proliferation of certain tissues due to invasion by some parasites can also cause tissue damage in the human being. For example, fibrosis of the liver after deposition of the ova of the schistoma. And again, in medical parasitology, each of the medically important parasites are discussed under the standard subheadings of morphology. Okay, we are looking at the basic concept of medical parasitology. We've just so far the introductory part. We started by defining what a parasite is, what human parasitology is, what we mean by medical parasitology. be able to look at the different issues to investigate aspects to investigate about parasites, that understand how we can manage and treat and prevent, look at different kinds of parasites, also different kinds of hosts, be able to delve in the relationship between host and the parasites, where we've called it the symbiotic relationship. And we've also looked at the effects of parasites on the host, both direct and indirect. Now I want us to look at the basic concepts of medical parasitology. And with this concept, you'll find that I mentioned the word morphology. You'll find that we want to find out basic information about this parasite. There are those investigations that we need to do. And as you do, they have standard subheadings like morphology, geographical distribution, infection, life cycle, parasite relationship, pathology, and clinical manifestations of the infection, laboratory diagnosis, treatment, and preventive control measures of the parasite. And in the subsequent sections, some of these criteria I can briefly presented. So beginning with the morphology, usually it's about shape, size, color, position of different organisms and different parasites at various stages of their development. And this is especially important in laboratory diagnosis, which helps to identify the different stages of development and differentiate between pathogenic and commensal organisms. For example, Entamoeba histolica and Entamoeba coli. So remember, we said commensalism is whereby the host will just feed this given parasite, but the parasite will not cause harm to the host. So morphology is very crucial, and it can be seen under the electron microscope or the other electric microscopes in use, or other means of checking out on what organisms are present. We have geographical distribution, and even though revolutionary advances in transportation has made geographical isolation no longer a protection against many of the parasitic diseases, many of them are still found in abundance in the tropics, and distribution of parasites depends on, one, the presence of food habits of a suitable host. So host specifically, for example, the Ancylostoma duodenale, this one is likely to be in the duodenum, requires man as a host, where Ancylostoma caninum requires a dog. Food habits, e.g. consumption of raw or undercooked meat or vegetables, predisposes to tymiasis, that is MIMO. Escape of the parasite from the host is also another factor that the distribution of the parasite will depend on, whereby the different developmental stages of parasites, which are released from the body along with feces and urine, are widely distributed in many parts of the world as compared to those parasites which require a vector or direct body fluid contact for transmission. Then environmental conditions favoring survival outside the body of the host, that is like temperature, the presence of water, humidity, etc., and also the presence of appropriate vector or intermediate host. Parasites that do not require an intermediate host, that is vector, for transmission are more widely distributed than those that do require vectors. So we started with morphology, we looked at geographical distribution. Maybe we'll also need to look at the issues on issues to do with the life cycle of the parasite, whereby this one is about the route of transmission, like the time of entry to the host to exit, including the extracorporeal, that is outside the host life. It can either be simple when only one host is involved, or complex involving one or more intermediate hosts. So a parasite's life cycle consists of two common phases, and one phase involves the route a parasite follows inside the body, and this information provides an understanding of the symptomatology and pathology of the parasite. In addition, the method of diagnosis and selection of appropriate medication may be determined. So the other phase, the route of parasite follows outside of the body, provides crucial information pertinent to epidemiology, prevention, and control. The one I'd mentioned in a while. Then host-parasite relationship is also another subheading that is usually common in medical parasitology when you're studying a parasite. So the host-parasite relationship, we mentioned quite a number. Do you remember them? We say there is mutualism, Any other that you remember? Commensalism. Then which one else? Yeah, you've already forgotten. Oh, okay, you remember. Yes, parasitism. There are those three major ways of relationship between the host and the parasite. Okay, then we have the carrier state, which is a perfect host-parasite relationship where tissue destruction by parasite is balanced with the host's tissue repair. At this point, the parasite and the host live harmoniously, that is, they are at equilibrium. Then disease rate, it is due to an imperfect host-parasite relationship where the parasite dominates the upper hand. It can result either from lower resistance of their host or a higher pathogenicity of the parasite. We also have parasite destruction, which occurs when the host takes the upper hand, and it's maybe because of higher immunity, it's able to fight back and destroy the parasite. Laboratory diagnosis depends on the nature of the parasitic infections, and the following specimens are usually selected for the laboratory diagnosis, like the blood. Usually we have the blood samples that are taken like for testing of the malaria and other infections that could be bacterial related. Then we have saliva. Yeah, we have stool, we have urine, we have sputum that, it comes from the throat, it's not just saliva. Then biopsy material, whereby maybe some tissues have to be picked from the body and investigated. Then we have also urethral or vaginal research, which sometimes gets affected. Now, we do have indirect evidences or changes indicative of intestinal parasitic infections, like the cytological changes in the blood, serological tests, treatments, and also prevention and control. Also, you have proper waste disposal related matters, personal hygiene, avoidance of unprotected sexual practices, and all this could be able to help in terms of indirect evidences to assess illness. We can now look at classification of medical parasitology, and usually, as we've already said, that parasites are those organisms that live and depend on other organisms, that is the host. The parasites of medical importance come under the kingdom called Protista and Animalia. Protista includes the microscopic single-cell eukaryotes known as protozoa. In contrast, helminths are macroscopic, they're bigger, macroscopic multicellular worms, possessing well-differentiated tissues and complex organs belonging to the kingdom Animalia. So medical parasitology is generally classified into one, medical protozoology, and this one deals with the study of medical important protozoa. Protozoology deals with protozoa. Then medical helminthology deals with the helminths, that is worms that affect man. Medical entomology deals with the study of arthropods, which cause or transmit diseases to man, as we shall be able to break them down. Then, we have that classification well highlighted in your notes. You could check through. In case you have any challenges, let me know. About general characteristics of medically important parasites. With the medically important protozoa, helminths, and arthropods, which are identified as causes and propagators of the disease, have the following general features. And these features differ among parasites in a specific category. So like for protozoa, usually protozoan parasite consists of a single cell-like unit, which is morphologically and functionally complete and can perform all functions of life. They're made up of a mass of protoplasm differentiated into cytoplasm and neuroplasm, nucleoplasm. The cytoplasm consists of an outer layer of hyaline, ectoplasm, and an inner voluminous granular endoplasm. The ectoplasm functions in protection, locomotion, and ingestion of food, excretion, and respiration. In the cytoplasm, there are different vacuoles responsible for storage of food, digestion, and excretion of waste products, and the nucleolus also functions in reproduction and maintaining life. So the protozoal parasites possess the property of being transformed from active, that is trophozoite, to an inactive stage, losing its power of motility and enclosing itself within a tough wall. Yeah. So in terms of reproduction, the methods of reproduction or multiplication among the parasitic protozoa of the following types. One, we do have the asexual multiplication. We have a simple binary fission, and we also have multiple fission or schizogony. So that one, I think, at least you went through. As you learn through your biology, you can acquaint yourself there. The conjugation, which is a process, a temporary union of two individuals occurs during which time interchange of nuclear material takes place, and later on the two individuals separate. But when you talk about the simple binary fission, in this process, after divisional of all the structures, the individual parasite divides either longitudinally or transversely into two or more or less equal parts. But with the multiple fission or schizogony, it's a process whereby more than two individuals are produced, e.g. asexual reproduction in Plasmodium. So I don't know if so far you have any question, and if you do, kindly feel free to ask during our live class as we engage. I do hope you will have listened to this audio before then. Okay, so about arthropods, we've looked at the protozoa. Arthropods usually form the largest group of species in the animal kingdom and are characterized by having...
You are currently the only person in this conference.
Yeah. Are characterized by having bilaterally symmetrical and segmented body with jointed appendages. And they have a hard exoskeleton, which helps enclose and protect the muscle and other organs. An open circulatory system with or without a dorsally situated heart pumps the blood hemolymph by arteries to the various organs and body tissues. Blood is returned to the heart through body spaces known as hemocoels, and in addition, respiratory, excretory, and nervous systems are present. So we find that we have arthropods which affect the health of humans by being either direct agents for disease or agents for disease transmission. The arthropods of medical importance are found in classes Insecta, Arachnida, and Crustacea, which have their own distinguishing features. So in class Insecta, the body is divided into head, thorax, and abdomen with one pair of antennae. Diseases like malaria, yellow fever, onchocerciasis, and trypanosomiasis are primarily transmitted by insects. Yeah, so usually with Crustacea, Arachnida, and Insecta are the three most common classes of arthropods of medical significance which need closer attention. So in terms of our review questions, I didn't mention about the helminths. Helminths, as we already said, they're just worms. So we have different types of worms depending again where they affect. So the helminthic parasites are multicellular, bilaterally symmetrically, animals having three germ layers, and the helminths of the importance of human beings are divided into three: cestodes, trematodes, and nematodes. Cestodes, trematodes, and nematodes. Trematodes and nematodes. And we have the characteristics highlighted in our notes. Please get through and make some short notes in case you have any queries. Let me know. So that is it for us to cover in our first topic. I do hope that you are okay, and we shall engage more as we interact in our next class. Have a nice time and enjoy till we meet.